And the Oscar goes to, it's a clean sweep. The Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
The Lord of the Rings. For the Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings.
Management realized the actor lacked the maturity the role demanded. Days into filming, Jackson fired the lead, triggering a massive crisis right in the middle of production. With the cameras already rolling and the lead role still empty, the pressure was mounting until the director finally found his man. A sudden call asked me to hop on a plane to New Zealand the very next day. When I asked for the details, they simply said, "It's for the Lord of the Rings." Securing Viggo Mortensen was anything but guaranteed, even though we were absolutely desperate to cast him. Honestly, we were caught in a massive bind. I tried to buy some time to think, but I was given a hard deadline of that same afternoon while my son stood right there beside me. The 11-year-old asked what was going on. When I mentioned the movie adaptation, I realized he was already obsessed with the books. I knew nothing about the lore. He asked about my character, and I described him as a guy living in the wilderness with tiny people. Given that Henry was around 11 or 12 and a massive fan of the books, he was beyond thrilled that his father might actually become Aragorn. He shouted that the character eventually takes the throne. I was stunned, but he kept pleading for me to accept the role. I finally gave in, and it turned out great. Viggo naturally stepped up as the anchor for the entire Fellowship cast. To me, he feels like a legendary star from a bygone era, pairing a gentlemanly demeanor with a profound, quiet dedication to his acting work. Brilliance tends to follow whenever Viggo is on set. However, finding the right fit for Gollum was a complicated ordeal. That screen test proved their mission was to craft the first digital entity capable of interacting with human actors in a way that felt completely authentic. Back then, digital figures looked wooden and lifeless, putting immense pressure on the production to make Gollum feel real. They initially scouted for voice talent, completely unaware of the physical performance required. It is painful. Listen as he attempts to deceive us once again. Crafting a digital icon like this is truly a collaborative feat involving countless technical departments. My role is to supply the emotional heart and physical intensity, but most importantly, the iconic sound. People often wonder, how exactly did I find that raspy voice? The sound emerged from the deep trauma the character carries. His name literally mimics that jarring sound in his throat. I wanted a sound that mimicked an involuntary throat spasm, like something was physically trapped in his neck. I treated him like a desperate addict, hooked on the ring's corrupting influence. Physical movements actually fueled his vocal performance. During that audition, a sudden realization hit me: physical energy, facial expressions, and speech are all deeply intertwined. To produce that sound, he had to contort his entire body and face with incredible intensity. That was the exact moment he truly found the soul of the character. Believe it or not, I drew inspiration from my cat, Dee, who wandered into the kitchen while I was brainstorming. He suddenly coughed up a furball right on the floor. That feline hack became the signature sound. Serkis landed the gig almost immediately thanks to his genius take on the part. Next, the tech crew had to record his genius. We needed to bridge the gap between his physical acting and the digital Gollum. Thus, the concept of performance capture emerged. This marked the beginning of Gollum's digital transformation journey. Now I'm delivering a full performance, which gives the other actors some real energy to engage with during filming. I'm using high-tech sensors to manifest Gollum's movements within the computer. We were working on the absolute bleeding edge of cinema. You're all alone, nobody cares for you. The impact of that acting went far beyond the boundaries of the film. We crave it. My precious. Critics insisted the story was impossible to adapt, and honestly, they had a point. Turning Tolkien's 1,000-plus page epic into a movie was a monumental task. He dedicated his life to crafting this alternate reality. Think about it. The man literally invented entire tongues and thousands of years of lore. Modern fantasy authors can't even touch that level of intricate world-building and depth. Naturally, that staggering scale made a film adaptation a total nightmare. A literal page-for-page recreation would have been a complete disaster, meaning Jackson couldn't tackle it alone. Just 1 year prior, he and his wife Fran nabbed an Oscar nomination for penning Heavenly Creatures. Naturally, she was the first person he reached out to. Fran and I kicked things off by condensing the trilogy into a 90-page summary. It was our initial stab at solving the narrative puzzle. They soon realized they needed a true scholar of the lore. That's when Philippa Boyens entered the picture. Since age 16, she reread the books annually and became a total expert. Because she knew the lore inside out, she joined the writing team. The trio worked closely, with Fran and me grinding through the pages while locked away in a hotel office. Fran would pass the work to Peter for refinement. We often encountered sections where we knew massive action was required. We simply let the action play out, trusting Peter to edit it into 20 minutes of pure movie magic. Ironically, he took the same hands-off approach with the romance, leaving those scenes entirely to us. He basically handed those scenes over, calling it our personal territory. The real nightmare was condensing 1,000 pages into a script, which meant making tough calls on what stayed and what was cut. I believe many of those changes actually enhanced the narrative, providing essential moments that the film truly needed. Fans will definitely complain about Tom Bombadil being missing, and while it's sad, we couldn't keep filming forever. Ultimately, the team managed to honor the heart of the original narrative. The team explored various creative paths, occasionally diverging significantly from the original text. Slowly but surely, it became obvious that the plan was working. With every new version, the writing moved closer to the source material until the screenplay finally clicked into place. A major studio initially backed the project, but a massive hurdle appeared when Miramax began insisting on condensing the entire story into just one film. As someone who's lived and breathed every page of those books, that proposal felt like a complete betrayal of the source material. Thankfully, Jackson stood his ground and refused to budge, which led Miramax to walk away and left the project hanging by a single thread. I told him we had exactly 4 weeks to find a partner willing to produce 2 features, so he headed to Hollywood to pitch everyone in town. He eventually scored a sit-down with the head of New Line Cinema, Bob Shea, where Peter and Fran laid out their entire vision with concept art and tapes. Shea looked right at them and asked why on earth anyone would only want to make 2 movies, a comment that initially left them both stunned. Jackson was essentially winging it until he realized he had a trilogy on his hands. That pivot was a miracle, considering how insane it was to tackle such a massive story all at once. After New Line Cinema signed on, the creators took their original pair of scripts and stretched them into 3 separate features. This required a ground-up reimagining that left no page unturned. The screenplay was essentially a living document, seeing major updates every single day during the entire 15-month production, as new pages were constantly faxed over. The screenplay stayed in constant flux, to better reflect the natural chemistry of the cast. As a performer myself, I understand the heavy toll of leaving your life behind for months. Even so, the idea of filming straight through for nearly a year and a half in the New Zealand wilderness was almost impossible to wrap our heads around. Both the crew and performers endured a brutal grind while Jackson attempted to capture lightning in a bottle. We knew from day one that the physical and mental exhaustion would be staggering. Intense psychological weight nearly crushed the team, compounded by the unforgiving New Zealand wilderness. Lugging equipment up active volcanoes and the nation's highest peaks proved to be a logistical nightmare. The local weather was another massive obstacle, particularly when the set for the first movie's finale was completely wiped out by a devastating flash flood. With multiple units filming all at once, Jackson had to monitor everything via satellite, surviving on a mere 4 hours of sleep to keep the wheels turning. When you are juggling 3 blockbusters simultaneously, the risk of the whole project jumping the tracks is huge, especially when money starts getting tight. Studios keep a death grip on their budgets, so every minute a shot runs over can result in massive financial penalties or lost resources. If you can't nail the performance within the allotted window, you're forced to cut corners, which ultimately hurts the final quality of the cinema experience. Jackson's warning about the pressure breaking us was spot on, especially during the 4 straight months of grueling night shoots for the Helm's Deep sequence. Unlike today's digital-heavy productions, these movies relied on practical sets and thousands of real extras, pushing the cast to their physical breaking points and causing real injuries. We knew every detail had to be mapped out perfectly to avoid disaster, so Jackson obsessively tackled every potential problem long before we ever arrived on set. From the very beginning, Peter used pre-visualization for every single shot, meaning every frame you see on screen was carefully storyboarded for our reference. Jackson's meticulous planning gave him the freedom to pivot on a dime. He could pinpoint dragging sequences or cut scenes entirely before burning through expensive celluloid, avoiding the nightmare of keeping a massive, high-priced crew idling on a set. After 438 days and work from over 2,000 people, they finally finished, though they really just had a massive pile of raw footage. We are talking about 3 million feet of raw footage. After nearly 3,000 visual effects passes and 274 days of editing, they finally emerged with 3 epic films. A stellar achievement. Thanks for everything, man. I'm holding on to these memories. These experiences are permanently burned into my brain. Until next time, my friend, working with you was a dream, Peter. To the entire team that breathed life into this saga, you have my deepest gratitude. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. On behalf of the entire fandom, the pleasure was all ours. I'm Adam with ScreenPuff. If you dug this story, definitely check out our next feature. As always, appreciate you for hanging out and watching.